Soak it all in.
Good afternoon, Emmy.
What's going on?
Nothing much, just to the old usual. Um,
Hi,
what?
I'm Joyce. I was a Job's daughters. So you're telling me I had to learn the whole book of Job for nothing?
Yes, yes.
You're funny. You are funny, funny, funny.
It
Yeah, that's
sounds.
why I became a Christian was because of the book of Job. If he could get through anything, I could get through anything. That's why I became a Christian. Because I was a Job's daughters.
Well, I respect that, and I'm not saying you can't find God in your situation that you're in, even though are not of Him at that moment. Yeah, you still can find God, but that doesn't mean what you came out of.
Job's daughters kept me out of trouble. They taught me how to respect other people. It's a good organization for young women.
Well, I'm not saying that organizations or institutions or other religions can't have good values. Yes, but that does not make it overall good. I mean, you might find some good stuff within, certain organizations that I'm not allowed to say on this panel or this app, but most people consider them good. They'll say, "Oh, this group did good things," but then there's a lot of information to prove that they did bad things. A lot of people said the Mustache Man did some good stuff.
We
I even got some.
never did. We never
Well,
did
well,
anything bad things in Job's daughters. Never.
I'm not saying you did, ma'am. What I'm saying is, Freemasonry offers the way for other people to join other secret societies. It's a gateway.
Freemasonry is just one of many ways to get people into the occult. But even more than that, it's able to get them into a really sort of packaged way to produce people that can be used in a more mechanical way in the system. That is, that they can be put into places of power to turn a lot of the gears and things like that.
Drug, and not only just that, ma'am. The
So would that
system
be
of
the same for
Masonry
12-step programs then?
would that
How
be
Because
was
the same for
12-step
what?
programs are anonymous and
What
they're
are the
secret,
12? What are the 12-step programs?
like AA and NA,
I don't know what that
CA,
is.
SA.
Hey, I'm here.
yeah?
Are anonymous programs that help people.
Well, to
Alcoholics
answer
Anonymous
Emmy
has been
real
around
quick.
for a long time. And it's an
To
anonymous
answer
program.
Emmy,
It's secret.
here I'm about to answer Emmy's question real quick, Miss Joyce. It says this right here, Emmy. The ancient mystery religions was taught in Babylon, Egypt, India, Persia, Greece, and then many other different areas. But not only just that, they taught the Kabbalism. Then also that comes down to Gnosticism. Then you get the Templars, the Rosicrucians, and then you got Freemasonry and Illuminati. But out of Freemasonry, you get people like Karl Marx, who was a Freemason. And then also we have other secret societies like the American and European secret political societies. We also have the international banking elite. We already should know who the banking elite are. People like the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan, many other different people I can name. Let's continue though. You got the World Council of Churches. So even your fellow pastor is a part of a secret society, whether Mason or non-Mason. Then also out of that, we also get the Theosophical Society. Then also we have many other different cults that arose out of the 1800s. Then also we have the New Spiritual Technology. We have many groups like Scientology. Have you ever heard of Scientology?
Yes, I have. That has nothing to do with Freemasonry, though.
But what I'm saying is Freemasonry offers a drug or a gateway drug to people to join these other secret societies. Even fraternities do. I'm not saying just Masonry.
Who finally have to say Christianity is a secret society, so to speak, then, right?
That's a lie because there's nothing secret about what I'm saying about Christianity. So I would have to ask you to tell information on that, or that would be honestly a lie.
Hey, you do know how Christianity was spread, right?
Through Christians being unalived, yes. That's how
No,
Christianity spread.
that was spread by them killing off the Jewish faith. They slaughtered Jews to spread Christianity. You do know that, right?
The- where
The
is your facts for
Christians.
that? Where's your facts for that? Because if you're bringing up the Crusades, that kind
No, 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 no,
of
no, no. Nobody's talking about the Crusades. I'm not talking about the Crusades. Eh, because Christianity was before the Crusades.
and if we know history correctly, we understand that Christians were actually being unalived for believing what they believe. Christians were actually
But
the target of the Roman Empire because, hey, oh, the god Athena, she doesn't want to give us crops and water today. Well, guess who did it? The Christians. They
no,
upset
the
Athena, so now they got
Christians
to unalive. That's how Christianity spread. And
spread their faith. The Christianity faith spread by them killing all those that did not believe like them.
no, that's not how
Mainly,
Christianity.
mainly the Jewish faith.
The emergence of Christianity during the height of the Roman era became a problem for the Romans. The more the Roman government tried to suppress Christianity, the more Christianity grew. Please remember that the next time somebody tries to tell you that religion is just a tool of control. Because the Roman government couldn't eliminate Christianity, it eventually decided to merge its belief system with it.
Shows that the New World Order has literally done everything in its power to keep the Bible from the public. And that brings me to my last form of argumentation, which is historically. It only took a few years after Jesus' death for the Roman emperors to start to see the Bible and Christianity as a threat to the Roman Empire. It was by the time of the Apostle Paul that the Emperor Nero began his infamous attempt at the extermination of Christians. In fact, the Apostle Paul was recorded to have been beheaded during the persecution of Nero. Nero actually used to have Christians dipped in tar and lit on fire to light his garden. Some say this is where the term Roman candle came from. This killing of Christians continued for almost 3 centuries. It records them being fed to the lions like it was a football game or something. In fact, the Emperor Diocletian, in around 287 to 305, he ordered all copies of the Bible destroyed. He actually was quoted as saying, "The Christian religion is destroyed and the worship of the gods is restored." Obviously, he was wrong. So if you think that the emperors of Rome were trying to encourage people to read the Bible or to become Christians so that they can control their mind, you're not considering history at all. After the fall of Rome, it actually got worse. The Roman Catholic Church eventually demonstrated that Rome had never really fallen at all, and had simply began ruling under the guise of the Church. Rome's same worship of the ancient Babylonian and Sumerian gods continued under different names, being attempted to be merged with true biblical Christianity. The problem this new merger had was that the Bible clearly debunked the idea of popes and worshiping of Mary and the saints and all this stuff. So people that read the Bible immediately saw through the Roman Catholic Church and saw that they were deceiving people about what the Bible said in order to control them. So they did what you would expect them to do. That is, they made the Bible illegal around 1200. And the translations that they did have were all in Latin, so no one understood what the Bible said for hundreds and hundreds of years. This is the time referred to as the Dark Ages. One thing that you will never get from the so-called teachers in the truth movement is that the Inquisitions began because of Bible-believing Christians, and millions of true Christians were tortured in the most ridiculously brutal ways to get them to renounce the Bible. They were often burned alive with the copy of the Bible that they illegally owned. Now let me ask you, does that sound like the actions of a group that wants people to read the Bible? Let's fast forward to the modern day and ask ourselves the question, do you think that the New World Order has any influence on the state schools or the universities? Well, why are they so anti-biblical? Or do you think that they have control over the music industry or the movie industry, TV shows, newspapers? Well, why are they so anti-biblical?
That would be a lie because, you see, that's how I know people like you and me who don't read the Bible.
No,
Because
see,
people like, no. People
you
like
can't
Saul.
use the Bible to see the bad Christianity has done. The Bible can only reflect the Bible.
That's a lie. First of all, those for people in the chat, Christianity started because people were unaliving Christians. People like Saul who turned to Paul, they unalived people. That's how Christianity spread. And it was a danger. You were basically a criminal of state if you were a Christian. That's how Christianity spread. People saw 12-year-old boys and 12-year-old girls walking into Roman Colosseums to be mauled by gladiators and lions and all other types of animals. That's how Christianity spread. Thank you, Brutus. The chart does look right.
No, Christianity was spread by death caused by Christians. You cannot name one major religious faith of today that was not spread by them killing those that did not agree with their faith. That's how it spread.
As I've stated, if we look at what the Bible says in history before the Crusades and the Inquisition, they say in the history books that Christians were the ones first martyred.
Fox's Christian Martyrs of the World by John Fox. Chapter 1. The Persecution of Early Christians. In the Gospel of Matthew, we read that Simon Peter was the first person to openly acknowledge Jesus as the Son of God, and that Jesus, seeking God's hand in this acknowledgement, called Peter a rock on which he would build his church, a church that even the gates of hell would not be able to defeat. This indicates three things. First, that Christ will have a church in this world. Secondly, that the church would be persecuted, not only by the world, but also by the powers of hell. Thirdly, despite its persecutions, the church would survive. The whole history of the church to this day verifies this prophecy of Christ. Princes, kings, and other rulers of this world have used all their strength and cunning against the church, yet it continues to endure and hold its own. The storms it has overcome are remarkable. I have written this history so the wonderful works of God within the church will be visible to all who might profit from them. Of all the people who heard Jesus speak, the Pharisees and scribes should have been the first to accept him, since they were so familiar with God's law. Yet they persecuted and rejected him, choosing to remain subject to Caesar, and it was Caesar who eventually destroyed them. God's punishment also fell heavily on the Romans. Hearing of Christ's works, death, and resurrection, Emperor Tiberius proposed to the Roman Senate that he be adored as God. But the senators refused, preferring the emperor to the King of Heaven. In reply, God stirred their own emperors against them, causing most of the Senate to be destroyed, and the city of Rome to be afflicted for nearly 300 years. Tiberius became a tyrant, killing his own mother, his nephews, the princes of the city, and his own counselors. Suetonius reported him to be so stern that on one day alone he saw 20 people executed. Pilate, under whom Christ was crucified, was sent to Rome and banished to the town of Vienne in Daphne, where he eventually committed suicide. Agrippa the elder was even imprisoned by Tiberius for some time. After Tiberius's death came Caligula, who demanded to be worshipped as a god. He banished Herod Antipas, the murderer of John the Baptist and condemner of Christ, and was assassinated in the 4th year of his reign. Following 13 cruel years under Claudius, the people of Rome fell under the power of Nero, who reigned for 14 years, killing most of the Roman Senate and destroying the whole Roman order of knighthood. He was so cruel and inhumane that he put to death his own mother, his brother-in-law, his sister, his wife, and his instructors Seneca and Lucian. He ordered Rome set on fire in 12 places while he sang the verses of Homer. To avoid the blame for this, he accused the Christians of setting the fires and caused them to be persecuted. In the year AD 70, Titus, the father of Vespasian, destroyed Jerusalem and all of Galilee, killing over 1,100,000 Jews and selling the rest into slavery. So we see that those who refused Jesus were made to suffer for their actions. The Apostles. The first apostle to suffer after the martyrdom of Stephen was James, the brother of John. Clement tells us, when this James was brought to the tribunal seat, he that brought him, and was the cause of his trouble, seeing him to be condemned, and that he should suffer death, was in such sort moved within heart and conscience, that, as he went to the execution, he confessed himself also, of his own accord, to be a Christian. And so were they led forth together, wherein the way he desired of James to forgive him for what he had done. After, James had a little paused within himself upon the matter. Turning to him he said, Peace be to thee, brother, and kissed him, and both were beheaded together. A.D. 36. Thomas preached to Parthians, Medes, Persians, Carameans, Hyrcanians, Bactrians, and magicians. He was killed in Kalamina, India. Simon, brother of Jude and James the Younger, who were all sons of Mary Cleophas and Alphaeus, was bishop of Jerusalem after James. He was crucified in Egypt during the reign of the Roman Emperor Trajan. Simon the Apostle, called Canaeus, and Zealots, preached in Mauritania, Africa, and Britain. He was also crucified. Mark, the first bishop of Alexandria, preached the gospel in Egypt. He was burned and buried in a place called Pluconus during Trajan's reign. Bartholomew is said to have preached in India and translated the Gospel of Matthew into their tongue. He was beaten, crucified, and beheaded in Albanopolis, Armenia. Andrew, Peter's brother, preached to the Scythians, Sogdians, and the Saith in Sebastopolis, Ethiopia, in the year 80. He was crucified by Aegeus, the governor of the Edessians, and buried in Petra, in Archaea. Bernard and Saint Cyprian mention the confession and martyrdom of this blessed apostle. Partly from them and partly from other reliable writers we gather the following material. When Andrew, through his diligent preaching, had brought many to the faith of Christ, Aegeus, the governor, asked permission of the Roman Senate to force all Christians to sacrifice to the honor of the Roman idols. Andrew thought he should resist Aegeus, and went to him, telling him that a judge of men should first know and worship his judge in heaven. While worshiping the true God, Andrew said, he should banish all false gods and blind idols from his mind. Furious at Andrew, Aegeus demanded to know if he was the man who had recently overthrown the temple of the gods and persuaded men to become Christians, a quote superstitious sect that had recently been declared illegal by the Romans. Andrew replied that the rulers of Rome didn't understand the truth. The Son of God, who came into this world for man's sake, taught that the Roman gods were devils, enemies of mankind, teaching men to offend God and causing him to turn away from them. By serving the devil, men fall into all kinds of wickedness. Andrew said that after they die, nothing but their evil deeds are remembered. The proconsul ordered Andrew not to preach these things anymore, or he would face a speedy crucifixion. Whereupon Andrew replied, I would not have preached the honor and glory of the cross if I feared the death of the cross. He was condemned to be crucified for teaching a new sect and taking away the religion of the Roman gods. Andrew, going toward the place of the execution and seeing the cross waiting for him, never changed his expression, neither did he fail in his speech. His body fainted not, nor did his reason fail him, as often happens to men about to die. He said, O cross, most welcome and longed for, with a willing mind, joyfully and desirously I come to you, being the scholar of him which did hang on you, because I have always been your lover and yearned to embrace you. Matthew wrote his gospel to the Jews in the Hebrew tongue. After he converted Ethiopia and all Egypt, Hyrcanus the king sent someone to kill him with a spear. After years of preaching to the barbarous nations, Philip was stoned and crucified at Hierapolis, Phrygia, and buried there with his daughter. Of James, the brother of the Lord, we read the following. James, being considered a just and perfect man, governed the church with the apostles. He drank no wine or any strong drink, ate no meat, and never shaved his head. He was the only man allowed to enter into the holy place, for he never wore wool, just linen. He would enter into the temple alone, fall on his knees, and ask permission for the people, doing this so often that his knees lost their sense of feeling and became hardened like the knees of a camel. Because of his holy life, James was called the Just, and the safeguard of the people. When many of their chief men began to be converted, the Jews, scribes, and Pharisees began to fear that soon all the people would decide to follow Jesus. They met James, saying, We beg you to restrain the people, for they believe Jesus as though he were the Christ. Persuade those who come to the Passover to think correctly about Christ, because they will all listen to you. Stand on top of the temple so you can be heard by everyone. During Passover, the scribes and Pharisees put James on top of the temple, calling out to him, You just man, whom we all ought to obey, this people is going astray after Jesus, who was crucified. And James answered, Why do you ask me of Jesus, the Son of Man? He sits on the right hand of the Most High, and shall come in the clouds of heaven. Hearing this, many were persuaded, and glorified God, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David. Then the scribes and Pharisees realized they had done the wrong thing by allowing James to testify of Christ. They cried out, Oh, this man is seduced too. Then they went up and threw James off the temple. But James wasn't killed by the fall. He turned, fell on his knees, and called, O Lord God, Father, I beg you to forgive them, for they know not what they do. They decided to stone James, but a priest said to them, Wait, what are you doing? The just man is praying for you. But one of the men there, a fuller, took the instrument he used to beat the cloth and hit James on the head, killing him, and they buried him where he fell. James was a true witness for Christ to the Jews and to the Gentiles.
And I also tell, and I had to talk to John G. Jones about this. I had to tell him too.
No,
Christianity from the Roman perspective, that's not Christianity. The Roman Catholic Church and what they did is what they did. They're not a Christian institution. That's a pagan institution. They just have on the garb of Christianity, a wolf in sheep clothing. That's what Jesus called them. They acted like they were of Jesus and of the Christian church, but they weren't. And that's the problem. If I went out here unaliving people and I said that I was a Mason and I'm not a Mason, you cannot say that William. Yeah, look at William Cooper. He breaks everything down. But to go back to you, if I was to do that, unalive people, and then say I'm a Mason, even though I'm not a Mason, that doesn't mean that actual Masonry is responsible for that. Because I only took on the garb of Masonry. I was a wolf in sheep clothing, acting like I was a Mason even though I wasn't. So that's what the Romans did when they started unaliving people, because the Bible says we are not supposed to spread Christianity like that. The Bible says shake off the dust on your feet, and hey, it would be better for Sodom and Gomorrah on that day of judgment, except for that city. So that's how Christianity was spread. Jesus never told them to hurt anybody. We are spreading the message through love. So as I've stated before, your history of where Christianity starts persecuting people clearly does not start in the beginning, nor even in the mid. It starts way at the end of the movie. You missed it. You missed a few parts of the movie.
That Eusebius records, a man might see cities full of men's bodies, the old lying together with the young, and the dead bodies of women cast out naked without reverence of that sex in the open streets. Many Christians in those days thought that Nero was the Antichrist because of his cruelty and abominations. The Apostle Peter was condemned to death during this persecution. Although some say he escaped, it is known that many Christians encouraged him to leave the city, and the story goes that as he came to the city's gate, Peter saw Jesus coming to meet him. "Lord, where are you going?" Peter asked. "I am come again to be crucified," was the answer. Seeing that his suffering was understood, Peter returned to the city, where Jerome tells us he was crucified head down at his own request, saying he was not worthy to be crucified the same way the Lord was. Paul also suffered under this persecution when Nero sent two of his esquires, Phrygia and Parthenius, to bring him to his execution. They found Paul instructing the people and asked him to pray for them, so they might believe. Receiving Paul's assurance that they would soon be baptized, the two men led him out of the city to the place of execution, where Paul was beheaded. This persecution ended under Vespasian's reign, giving the Christians a little peace. The second persecution. The second persecution began during the reign of Domitian, the brother of Titus. Domitian exiled John to the island of Patmos, but on Domitian's death, John was allowed to return to Ephesus in the year AD 97. He remained there until the reign of Trajan, governing the churches in Asia, and writing his gospel until he died about the age of 100. Why did the Roman emperors and senate persecute the Christians so? First of all, they didn't understand that Christ's kingdom is not a temporal kingdom, and they feared for their powerful leadership roles if too many Christians followed Christ. Secondly, Christians despised false Roman gods, preferring to worship only the true living God. Whatever happened in Rome, famine, disease, earthquake, wars, bad weather, was blamed on the Christians who defied Roman gods. Death was not considered enough punishment for the Christians, who were subjected to the cruelest treatment possible. They were whipped, disemboweled, torn apart, and stoned. Plates of hot iron were laid on them. They were strangled, eaten by wild animals, hung, and tossed on horns of bulls. After they were dead, their bodies were piled in heaps and left to rot without burial. Nevertheless, the church continued to grow, deeply rooted in the doctrine of the apostles and watered with the blood of the saints. The third persecution. During the third persecution, Pliny II wrote to the Emperor Trajan, complaining that thousands of Christians were being killed daily, although none of them had done anything worthy of persecution. During this persecution, Ignatius was condemned to death because he professed Christ. At the time, he was living in Antioch, next in line as bishop after Peter. As he made the trip from Syria to Rome under heavy guard, he preached to the churches he passed and asked the Church of Rome not to try to save him. Condemned to be thrown to the lions, Ignatius replied, "I am the wheat of Christ. I am going to be ground with the teeth of wild beasts, that I might be found purebred." The fourth persecution. After a respite, the Christians again came under persecution, this time from Marcus Aurelius in AD 161. One of those who suffered this time was Polycarp, the venerable bishop of Smyrna. 3 days before he was captured, Polycarp dreamed that a pillow under his head caught fire, and when he awoke, he told those around him that he would burn alive for Christ's sake. Hearing his captors had arrived one evening, Polycarp left his bed and welcomed them, ordered a meal prepared for them, and asked for an hour alone to pray. The soldiers were so impressed by Polycarp's advanced age and composure that they began to wonder why they had been sent to take him. But as soon as he had finished his prayers, they put him on an ass and brought him into the city. As he entered the stadium with his guards, a voice from heaven was heard to say, "Be strong, Polycarp, and play the man." No one nearby saw anyone speaking, but many people heard the voice. Brought before the tribunal and the crowd, Polycarp refused to deny Christ, although the proconsul begged him to consider yourself and have piety on your great age, reproach Christ, and I will release you. Polycarp replied, 86 years I have served him, and he never once wronged me. How can I blaspheme my king who saved me? Threatened with wild beasts and fire, Polycarp stood his ground. What are you waiting for? Do whatever you please. The crowd demanded Polycarp's death, gathering wood for the fire and preparing to tie him to the stake. Leave me, he said. He who will give me strength to sustain the fire will help me not to flinch from the pile. So they bound him, but did not nail him to the stake. As soon as Polycarp finished his prayer, the fire was lit, but it leapt up around him, leaving him unburned, until the people convinced a soldier to plunge a sword into him. When he died, so much blood gushed out that the fire was immediately extinguished. The soldiers then placed his body into the fire and burned it to ashes, which some Christians later gathered up and buried properly. In this same persecution, the Christians of Lyons and Vienne, 2 cities in France, also suffered, including Sanctus of Vienne, Martyrus, Alatus of Pergamus, and the woman Blandina, all of whom endured extreme torture and death with fortitude and grace. The fifth persecution, AD 200. During the reign of Servius, the Christians had several years of rest and could worship God without fear of punishment. But after a time, the hatred of the ignorant mob again prevailed, and the old laws were remembered and put in force against them. Fire, sword, wild beast, and imprisonment were resorted to again, and even the dead bodies of Christians were stolen from their graves and mutilated. Yet the faithful continued to multiply. Tertullian, who lived at this time, said that if the Christians had gone away from the Roman territories, the empire would have been greatly weakened. Now the persecutions had extended to northern Africa, which was a Roman province, and many were murdered in that area. One of these was Perpetua, a married lady, 26 years old, with a baby at her breast. On being taken before the proconsul Minutius, Perpetua was commanded to sacrifice to the idols. Refusing to do so, she was put in a dark dungeon and deprived of her child. But 2 of her keepers, Tertius and Pomponius, allowed her out in fresh air several hours a day, during which time she was allowed to nurse her child. Finally, the Christians were summoned to appear before the judge and urged to deny their Lord, but all remained firm. When Perpetua's turn came, her father suddenly appeared, carrying her infant in his arms, and he begged her to save her own life for the sake of her child. Even the judge seemed to be moved. "Spare the gray hairs of your father," he said. "Spare your child. Offer sacrifice for the welfare of the emperor." Perpetua answered, "I will not sacrifice." "Are you a Christian?" demanded Hilarianus, the judge. "I am a Christian," was her answer. Perpetua and all the other Christians tried with her that day were ordered killed by wild beasts as a show for the crowd on the next holiday. They entered the place of execution clad in their simplest of robes, Perpetua singing a hymn of triumph. The men were to be torn to pieces by leopards and bears. Perpetua and a young woman named Felicitas were hung up in nets, at first naked, but the crowd demanded that they should be allowed their clothing. When they were again returned to the arena, a bull was let loose on them. Felicitas fell, seriously wounded. Perpetua was tossed with her loose robe torn and her hair falling loose, but she hastened to the side of the dying Felicitas and gently raised her from the ground. When the bull refused to attack them again, they were dragged out of the arena, to the disappointment of the crowd, which wanted to see their deaths. Finally, brought back in to be killed by gladiators, Perpetua was assigned to a trembling young man, who stabbed her weakly several times, not being used to such scenes of violence. When she saw how upset the young man was, Perpetua guided his sword to a vital area and died. The seventh persecution.
Christianity up. The first 2 Christians were who? Who was the first 2 Christians? The first
Some
2
people
Christians.
that was named in Antioch. I believe it was in the book of Acts.
No. The first 2 Christians, the ones that started the faith known as Christianity.
You said who started Christianity?
Yes. Who
Jesus.
started? Jesus was not a Christian.
Who started Christianity?
Yes. Who
Jesus.
started? Jesus was not a Christian. Or anything.
Yes, he was.
Jesus. You cannot show me anywhere that say
Okay,
Jesus
this is
was
from
a
your
Christian.
perspective.
No. Tell me the Bible verse to say Jesus was a Christian. Jesus was never a Christian.
From what the Bible teaches, Jesus was not this ordinary Jew. Christian or Christ in the end, that's little flocks of Jesus, little shepherds of Jesus, says the Son of God.
See, that is a faith. Like Buddha is a faith. Like Allah is a faith.
Okay, but this still doesn't defeat the purpose that you can't be a Mason and a Christian, because there is nothing Christian-like or biblically-like about Masonry.
Freemasonry do not offer a guide to salvation. That's what so many people fail to understand.
I've already shown documentation that that's actually what Masons in Masonry believe, that there is a way to salvation.
Like Albert Pike said, in the words of Albert Pike, a profane can read everything. If they do not have the underlying understanding of what they reading, then those words are just words.
That's not the case.
If you have not went over everything Albert Pike said, if you have not went over everything Prince Hall wrote, if you have not went over all the sources they cited, what you read in that one book is just words.
Okay, well, I mean, there are certain things.
That is why I gladly tell people, I can give you every book inside my briefcase, and Freemasonry will still be absolutely safe. Because if you don't know how to put it together, you just know words. That's it.
That's not the case, because there are certain things in the Bible, yes, you do need interpreted, but there are things in the Bible that doesn't need to be interpreted. It's self-explanatory. So if you're telling me that I'm that stupid, I'm that much of a profane and a coward that I can't understand simple basic reading, no, because I let you speak, Emmy. I let you speak, and that's what I kind of feel like you telling me, that there are certain things that I'm just too stupid to understand.
No, I'm saying there's certain
because I'm not a Mason.
Morals and Dogma, the very highest source in Freemasonry, page 870. The Templars, like all other secret orders and associations, had two doctrines. One concealed and reserved for the masters, which was Johannism. The other public, which was the Roman Catholic. It's quite straightforward. So there is a doctrine that is being taught to the masses, and the masses are the uninitiated. Marx called them cattle. They are also called catechumens. They are called goyim. They are called all kinds of derogatory names. Now, if the outer shell, the teaching of the Templars to the people, was Catholicism, they also, of course, adopted a very pious garb and pretended this was the crux of their religion. But on the inside, they had another religion. And the order that they ascribed to is Johannism. Now, we have many orders of
things I want to put together in Freemasonry that you don't understand.
Okay,
because you
okay.
only
As I stated
looking
before,
at
there are
it
things that are
from
self.
this is what the Bible say standpoint. The
Okay,
Bible
well,
is
Emmy, are you
nothing
gonna
but a
keep cutting
book
me
of
off, though, bro?
allegory. That's what the Bible is. It's a book of allegory.
That's not what the Bible teach. But
See,
to state
you
that
can
Mama
only
Chicken, I know
speak
that.
on what the
Emmy, you
Bible
gonna keep
say.
interrupting me, bro? Emmy, you gonna keep interrupting me, bro?
We talking
Because
back and
like I
forth.
said, well, first I was trying to state Mama Chicken because I know that she is one of those people that like to go to the Freemasons and say certain stuff that she's heard on other people's lives. So I just want to state that I know that you do that. So you're more than welcome to screenshot, record, whatever you're gonna do. It ain't gonna be nothing over here.
Hey,
So I just want to state that.
Why did you
but
invite me up?
Because you came on the live, and I know that you go on people's lives like the Professor, Daniel Jack, many other different Masons I can name.
It's
So
not
I just want to let you
Daniel.
know, because I know that you also give them information too. So I'm saying whatever information you want to give, you're more than welcome to. I just want you on the panel so you can see this for yourself.
See what?
Just so we clear about things.
he okay, Mama okay.
No, I'm just not because I know that
I'm just
it's been a
confused.
lot of
Like,
you Freemasons. You said what, Mama Chicken?
I'm confused because what are we talking about?